It has been 4 months since they came. 2 since I abandoned my wife and daughters to save myself. I do not pray for forgiveness, for I am unworthy of it. I only beseech the most holy God Emperor that this record may survive the death that now rapidly engulfs my world, so that perhaps other territories of mankind may not suffer as ours has. That I, body and soul, am now damned, is beyond all doubt. My fate, however, does not have to be shared by others. It began much longer than 4 months ago. The signs were inconspicuous, but they were there. Only in hindsight now do I see them. At the time I was ignorant, blissfully so, as were my generals, my advisors, my priests. Not one now lives, all probably little more than bubbling biogruel in some nutripit awaiting consumption by the bioships that dominate the skies above. What were the signs? Tectonic activity that toppled HAB blocks, gravitic upheaval that cast orbital stations to the ground or flung them into deep space, bizarre tidal patterns that dried seas and drowned townships. Then there were the deaths and the disappearances. For many months, they were merely the problem of local enforcer detachments, and I heard nothing of them. Until they grew numerous enough, that is. Rumors became known then about Xenos Tyranid's involvement. I dismissed them as nonsense. The acts of sabotage, the grisly murders, the weapons thefts, all were the malicious acts of malcontents, I declared, who would be hunted down and punished. There had been no known encounters with the Xenos in the entire subsector, and thanks to the efforts of my ancestors and myself, Hüttos was as well guarded as it ever had been. Then the shadow descended, and I knew how wrong I had been. We lost contact with our neighbor worlds of Zornst and Gedaglel, the Sinenfrar Anchorage naval base, as well as the Forge Moon Aleph B7. All had been staunch friends, our relationships with their masters built up over many centuries of careful diplomacy and generous aid. Once the ear-bleeding screaming of our astropaths finished, and the servitors scraped and washed away what little remained of the poor souls, there was total silence. It was as if we were the last human world in the galaxy. I kept this from the people, and most of my advisors. But I could not hide the monsters' ships. I could not deny the existence of the filth that plunged through our atmosphere, nor the vanguard beasts that stalked our lands and darkened our skies. I was informed that atmospheric scans claimed that some trillion tons of spore matter was released over us within a matter of days. Many were explosives, part of a preliminary bombardment that saw hundreds of thousands of souls melted by searing acids or pierced through with venomous spikes. A great portion were amniotic pods, filled with spawning fluids in which gestated savage, blade-limbed beasts. It was only weeks later, around the time that Gazellus Keep and the spire of his everlasting greatness fell, that we gained a greater understanding of what the remaining spores did to our world. In the southern tundras, average temperatures had almost doubled. Humidity the same. The Gardine salt flats and Hularuth sand sea, devoid of life for millennia, now resembled forests of chitin-covered alien protrusions sprouting out from the ground. Many billowing clouds of yet more spores. Perversely, crop yields collapsed to all but nothing. Livestock succumbed to the foulness in the air in their millions. Hüttos was a fortress world, first and foremost. Every major settlement was a citadel, defended not only by high walls, nests of automated turret slaves and armies of disciplined soldiery, but by secondary keeps and bastions. My family had proudly maintained these for 7 generations. All was for naught. Carefully grown ammunition stockpiles were exhausted at Fort Kern and High Wall in hours. The barrels of anti-air weapons previously maintained to perfection melted with the sheer volume of fire my gunners put through them in an attempt to stop the colossal swarms of winged beasts that dominated our skies. The hordes were endless. From the spire of his boundless might, I saw tides of creatures that filled the landscape to the horizon, towering monsters larger than our mightiest battle tanks, striding above the masses. I saw them sweep through forests and tear every tree down, as if they were some nation-sized avalanche. My world seethed with Xenos. Armored relief columns we dispatched to the first bastions attacked were rolled over by seas of claws and fangs, and things only grew worse. The honoured citadel and the keep of St. Melihu both fell from within as boreholes opened in the ground behind their shielded walls, and sinuous clawed beasts poured out like a spreading pool of promethium. In the space of little more than 2 weeks, it was impossible to maneuver armies in the field. Every fortress not yet overrun by the Xenos was alone, and under siege. Batteries of artillery beasts pounded our walls with living ordnance that rabidly ate at meters-thick walls. Miles of minefields were undone when the Xenos merely advanced through them. We cheered when first we saw the stupidity of the alien in action. Then we realized how the losses of even millions of creatures made no difference to our foes. In their wake came the ram beasts, the wall crawlers, the tunnel delvers, and the cannon haulers. How quickly did they seem to adapt to our defensive ploys and stratagems? Our meticulously planned bombardment patterns became all but worthless. They seemed to just know our garrison rotating routines that theoretically ensured all our soldiers were well rested, attacking when some of our troops were exhausted and others not yet fully ready to take their places on the battlements. Or the Tyranids just never stopped attacking, making it all but impossible for our troops to recover and resupply as would be optimal and that our strategies required. Of course we made alterations. Each change the Xenos learned more quickly than the last. One by one, our defenses fell. The Golden Citadel, 3,000 years old. The Tide Guard, having overlooked the Jade Ocean for centuries, was toppled into the frothing waves below. Keep 25 vanished from the landscape, sinking into a huge pit. We boarded aircraft and fled, so many of us did, taking to mountain fastnesses and seaborne strongholds. The latter certainly proved no sanctuary. Monsters burst from the waves, their concentric circles of immense razor-sharp teeth rotating in opposing directions. They chewed through our craft with sickening ease. Winged nightmares descended from the spore clouds that blocked out the light of our star, gutting sentries, drenching our craft and walls with gouts of acid, or bombarding them with hails of ravenous living ammunition and spore mines. It has been many weeks since a handful of us escaped the sinking of the sea-fort Divine Anchor via airlift. We only escaped in this manner because the Tyranids had overwhelmed so much of our world they no longer appeared to need to continue spawning beasts for aerial supremacy. I shall never forget what I saw from my craft's portholes. Alien biostructures dominated Hüttos' surface. Gigantic lumpen barnacles pumped out clouds of matter to further poison the planet, alongside pulsating brain-like nodes that resembled lethal fungi. Immense capillary towers stretched high into the poisoned sky. The glistening chitin coating their flanks crawled over by chains of lesser beasts, fulfilling some sick, alien purpose. I cannot know. Digestion pools spread for miles, replacing our once great lakes with reservoirs of bubbling biomatter. Tides of creatures, bloated with consumed flesh, vomited their guts into the pools or threw themselves entirely into the bilious liquid. Amidst the seas of feeder beasts consuming all in their path, we would see every so often an explosion or a burst of fire. Were these heroic final stands by other survivors, or merely abandoned ordnance detonating at random? I will never know. I cannot rejoice in the deaths they inflicted. The biomatter of the dead Xenos was surely recycled by the Xenos regardless, in no time at all. Our aircraft ran out of fuel a week ago. Now I stand in the snow, not far from the peak of Mont Saint-Hilaire. I am the only one left that I know of. One by one, those with me perished. The slightest cut on a mountain rock resulted in an immediate infection that left the pilot in screaming agony. Her co-pilot fired the shot that ended her torture. My senior aide threw himself from a ledge, the reality that there was no escape hitting him. I have no idea what happened to my chief medicae. Others were slain by lone beasts the rest of us were able to kill or drive away. A justly deserved end will soon be mine. I have failed on every possible level. We were not even able to send word. An alien disease has me within its grasp. My limbs are numb. My tongue is dry as sand. My head throbs. Even at these chilled heights, I sweat profusely. From here where I sit, I can see the final death unfold of the planet entrusted to me. Before me is the Rudderhean Ocean. The water level is visibly dropping, hour by hour. They are even taking our seas. There are enormous beasts with great slowly flapping wings and immense open maws moving through the sky. I may be at high altitude, but the air is thinner here than it should be. I know enough of mountaineering to know that. They will not even leave our air. There is an isthmus I can see, upon which is sat one of the Xenos capillary towers. Now I believe I can tell what they are truly for. High up, foul Xenos bioships cling to their flanks like twisted calves at their mother's udders. They are feasting, I'm sure, hungrily filling themselves to burst on the hideous gruels that are what remains of my people. I have witnessed the planet's death from sinister start to hideous conclusion. I see the power of our foe, and, though I have shown boundless weakness these past months, I do not see how we could ever have won.